the self-harm, chronic mental breakdowns, and worse things that accompany that. If the board goes through with this policy, then the inevitable harm that comes with it will not only have been entirely preventable, but the sole fault of the board
30
that enabled
seconds.
it. Yeah, I'm done.
And other school personnel had with parents. We all worked together for the good of the students. We were encouraged to contact parents if there were any problem or change with a student. For the most part, parents I contacted were grateful for the communication. I cannot believe that things have changed so much. I can't believe that I'm here advocating for parents to be notified if their child is transitioning to another sex. Isn't that something that parents would want to know? Children are a gift from God to their parents. Parents have a God-given right to take care of their kids. With rare exceptions, there is no better advocate than a parent. Do you think that the school personnel can make better decisions than you about your child? Can teachers unions, Governor Newsom?
30 seconds.
Many adults who have transitioned are detransitioning. Out of 237 detransitioners, only 18% said they were fully informed about serious side effects. And these were adults. Relying on the child to make this decision without parental consent is ludicrous. So yes, parents should be notified if their child is headed down this road. They can either support or not support the child, but at least they have been given the choice. Thank you for your time.
Carol Brown, followed by Jessica Tapia.
Good evening, everybody. And I just messed up my... It was a year and week, September 11th, 2001, when I was hired to work at Chaparral as an instructional assistant in special ed. My children both attended there too. It was a time that this country united against a common enemy. It is time to come together and to work together, teacher with parents. At that time, they wanted me to begin working earlier, as soon as I could. A very trying time for our country, but it helped unite us. We need to realize that it is so valuable to work together. At teacher staff meetings, we would talk about how to get parents more involved in their students' education. 22 years ago, this Chaparral motto was character counts and academic excellence was desired for each student. There were rules of respect enforced in the classrooms and on campus and
30
everywhere.
seconds.
Let's get back to learning the basics so that our children can live in this world respecting one another and all authority over them, including their parents, so it will go well with them. I ask you tonight, how far have we gone from this? There is no one greater than the advocate of a parent. Please let's work together. I know I have grandchildren now in the district. Please vote yes tonight for parental notification. Thank you.
Jessica Tapia, followed by Dan Brown.
Good evening, members of the board. We're here tonight to debate what we already know is a fact, which is that children are the domain of their parents, and that does not change when a child is going through an identity crisis, period. So I stand before you tonight as a real-life example of what can happen if and when parental notification policy is not put in place. Long story short, when I spoke up and said I will not lie to parents, I was fired because my school district could not accommodate my religious beliefs. So much for inclusivity. And on that note, you can't truly claim inclusion when you force teachers to exclude parents. You see, when something horrific happens to you, like it's happened to me as a wrongfully fired teacher, it lights a fire underneath you to not only seek justice for how you were wronged, but to bring about change so that no one else is wronged the way you were. This policy is the very change that needs to be put in place so that parents are not wronged by lies and teachers are no longer compelled to forsake their values and convictions to save their salary. I speak confidently when I say that I believe the majority of teachers want to stand for what's right and not lie to their students' parents. But the current guidance of withholding info from parents has teachers around the country scared for their career. Teachers are quitting in droves, and many that are currently in a credential program are highly considering changing their career route. I know this for a fact because I've received hundreds of messages from teachers and future teachers who are horrified by what's happening. Tonight, you have the power to not only protect God-given rights of parents, but teachers on the front lines who are prepared to die on the hill of truth, praying you choose wisely.
Dan Brown, followed by Jennifer Bach.
There are problems with the often quoted high suicide rates for trans teens. The claim of 40 to 50% of the teens attempting suicide at least once, stating discrimination as the cause. One problem is that stated claim of discrimination was taken as fact without scrutiny. That was why the Obama Medicare in 2016 rejected funding, because they found numerous faults with the studies. There were two main reasons. In Sweden, the country that is considered the most accepting of transgenders in the world, still has the highest suicide rate for them. Second, worse was those that did go through gender affirming procedures have a 19 times higher suicide rate. You are not saving the child by hiding their mental struggles from their parents, nor are you saving them from suicide. You are leading them to it. It's conflict with reality. Transgenders can never know a state of peace and acceptance in themselves because it's biologically impossible to transition. There are no
30
successful
seconds.
sex change procedures ever. There are none. Are the naysayers willing to tell these truths to the children? A parent will. It cannot be the teen is right and the parents are wrong as the standard. The parents are the greatest advocate. If teachers really loved those kids, they would make it a point to notify the parents. You'd make it a point to help the child accept who they are and not affirm that which will ultimately bring them to ruin. Save our schools, save our children, pass the policy.
Jennifer Bach, followed by Addison Dunham.
My speech has been covered quite often today, so I'm just really going to talk about some of the misinformation that I'm hearing about the transgender community, as well as addressing some of the concerns on both sides of the table and trying to bridge the gap so we can find ways to really address the concerns, because there's valid concerns on both sides. So as part of the misinformation, I think one of the main concerns that I see cited in the agenda item and cited in this new policy is that one of the goals is to prevent this long-term self-harm, of preventing this irreversible procedure. And one, I think in most practices and in most cases, the evidence-based practices do not allow permanent procedures to happen at a young age. Those are advocating by law to be older and older, and they cannot be done without parental consent, period. So I just encourage the continued information. Additionally, I think we should be talking about notifying parents. It's
30
important.
seconds.
It's important that we are notified as parents. However, the main concern is that for the very small few kids who do not have a supportive environment, this is the policy that's threatening their well-being. And so that's our focus, is what are we doing to bridge the gap to make sure that those kids are taken care of if this is imposing a threat into their well-being. You're going to see higher dropout rates. You're going to see attendance go down. You're going to see kids falling out of school and wellness. And what are we doing about that to prevent the harm?
Addison Dunham, I know you spoke. Okay, so Andrea, did you want to speak again on this? Okay. Veronica Langworthy? No. Followed by Chris Velez.
Well, almost good morning. I really appreciate that since you've had your little self-evaluation, you've kind of gelled together a little bit more and are communicating as a board. You sure are getting a lot of emotional blackmail on both sides out here. But what I would like to say is that adults need to talk to each other to dispel fears and to work through together for the best of the children. And that's what you guys are called to do, and that's what you're still sitting here at almost midnight to do. And I appreciate that the trustees have the opportunity to further build trust and promote communication with all parents and guardians without discriminating between those perceived as chosen or excluded by someone's bias. And so knowing that we all parents have the right to be informed. The parents are stakeholders, just as you are stakeholders. We have a lot of stakeholders in our community. They should not be excluded. It's part of accreditation that stakeholders are included.
30
But you're
seconds.
talking about their child, the one that after they graduate, they'll go back home, they'll be there. Family will be there. And I don't see, I've seen my kids' teachers occasionally about the community, but I don't see them coming over to our house and sitting with our kids as adults and with the grandkids. So, yes, teachers have an important role, but that role includes the parents. And this policy really
Chris, followed by Jenna.
Good evening. Just as a point of reference, no relation to Dr. Velez, just so we're all clear, it's not a common name here in Temecula. So I've thought a lot about this, and I've really gone back and forth and listened to what people are saying tonight. So I don't have a big impassioned speech. I have some questions. I want to know how we're reconciling some things. Earlier tonight, this board said we're going to promote a trauma-free environment for all students. How are you going to provide that for the trans students based on this protocol? I don't know how you do that. In this bill, or in this proposal, it says, among other things. What are the other things that the teachers are going to be required to tell us about? Seems pretty vague. Other things mean what? There's a lot of talk about parental rights. And I agree, I'm all for parental rights. However, I think parental rights come with obligations. Lots of people want to talk about, well, my rights, my rights, my rights. What about your obligations to your child? We keep talking about, well, the teachers are keeping things from us. Well, no, your child's keeping it from you. That's the difference. This isn't a problem in our classrooms. This is a problem in our homes. My home included, there are things that my 9-year-old son won't tell me that he will tell his mother. And that's a bummer for me. And we work through that. But that happens in my home. This proposal is dangerous for a lot of reasons. Not for the least of which, among other
Jenna, followed by Josiah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Jenna Lettuce. I am a parent of a student at Summit Academy, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I had a whole speech written out, but I'm going to skip it because a lot of teens and young adults were up here saying what I wanted to say. So I'm going to skip down and say, if this board chooses to adopt this parental notification, we're not only violating California Ed Code, we are undermining the human dignity of our students. We are preventing them from exploring who they are and how they fit into our community. And we are robbing them of the opportunity to do all of this in a safe environment. Not all homes are safe. Public school is a place that should be. Please do not vote on this action item tonight. Take your time to listen to how your community feels about the parental notification. This board has discussed parental involvement at previous meetings. Do your due diligence as you did with the TCI Social Studies program. Talk to
30
TVUSD
seconds.
parents like me. Send out a poll. Listen to the students, particularly the ones tonight, and others who have viewpoints that might conflict with your own. Hear what they say and consider what our world is like for them. Have empathy. Then review this update again. You should find that it does more harm than good. Thank you.
Josiah, followed by Ed.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'm a former California congressional candidate, longtime police officer, deputy sheriff, and I served at the State Department under Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. I want to just point out that, well, for one, I want to thank you for continuing to fight because you were duly elected to do exactly this. And regardless of a fringe group that opposes you daily, you are doing exactly what you were elected to do, and that's how a republic works. A republic that myself and many others like me fought, and unfortunately many died for, was exactly this example right here. Let me clear up some grotesque misunderstandings. There is perhaps no one that loves a child more than their parents. I have 3 kids. I would, as I have sacrificed a lot of time and taken a lot of risk for the public, for my own kids, I would die. There's no contingent upon that. But as an adult, as a parent, you have an obligation to
30
raise
seconds.
them, to nurture them, and to guide them. Little kids, anybody who has kids should know this, do not know what's best for them. It's common sense. Sometimes my kid wants to be a dinosaur. Other times he wants to be Spider-Man. When they're 18, they'll move on. But until then, children do not belong to the government. It is not their right, and we will adamantly fight to oppose that with all of our will. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God.
Ed Day? No, Ed Day? Okay. Daniel Molina? Followed by Jacob.
And Jose, the live feed's up, right? Just to give that update to the audience. It's been up for like 10 minutes.
Before children ever attend school, they know most of their nonverbal communication signs. They know certain words, how to go potty. A lot of them even know the ABCs. Who was it taught to them by? Who teaches them basic coordination skills, the ability to throw a ball, ride a bike, the concept of love, respect, right versus wrong, and accountability? We do. So to insinuate that informing a parent is outing a student is disgustingly disingenuous. Teachers notify us when they need money for trips or for instruments, when our child needs to be picked up, when our child is seriously in trouble, discipline-wise. To make the claim that they are the safe space for our children over us is ridiculous. There should be no adult trying to keep secrets with children behind the back of their parents. I don't care what you do for work. My son's biological mother lives in Illinois. I was awarded primary custody of him by the state of Illinois and have a very specific custody order in place regarding our communication requirements. Tell me, how would a teacher's secret with my son impact that? In what world would that situation override the verbiage of a custody order?
30 seconds.
If my children identify as anything other than the gender they were assigned at birth, they would not be treated by any bias or hate. Not a single thing would change regarding the outlook of my child. This policy doesn't make teachers the mediators of the topic. It simply requires that a parent be involved from the start of the process. No adult's engagement with a child regarding the topic of gender should supersede that of a parent's, period. Thank you.
Jacob Weatherby?
Alrighty. You guys hear me? First off, I do want to say, as a 2015 graduate of TVHS, I am very proud and excited about our future with the classes that followed my 2015 class. And for the 412 Church, TVHS is a high school in Temecula. Just thought our outsiders should know about that. So tonight, there are many parents here who are concerned about the safety of their students, and I am in solidarity of that. And this ordinance or proposal is putting the students of LGBTQ, particularly trans kids, at risk. And we cannot ignore the fact that there are many trans kids that have been kicked out of their homes because they had unaccepting parents. I know majority of parents are good, but not everyone's perfect, and we can't put that burden on kids who don't have tolerant parents. And I just implore all of you, I know that 3 of you are already made up your minds because you have political ambitions and you're kind of political hacks and are
seconds.
corrupt. Thank you. But I want to say to the trans kids in our community who don't listen to these guys. You will always have support somewhere in this community. And even though these 3 will not be your allies, I'll be your ally. And I know there's a lot of people in this room that will be your ally.
Excuse me, don't face
and the future
audience,
is ours.
Sir. Please, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just the board.
Hope you get recalled.
Diana Arban? Is there a Diana Arban? Okay. Melody Wilson? Judy? Oh, Melody? Sorry, Melody.
So, like everybody has said, most of the stuff has been discussed. But I do want to say that this policy doesn't affect people with supportive families. This policy affects people who have hateful families. And I have a question. If you approve this policy, are you going to take care of the kids who are kicked out? Are you going to go and pick them up? Are you going to take care of them how they should be taken care of? And I can guarantee you that you won't. My mom is a social worker, and she has seen the lowest points of people's home lives. And I wish that we could pretend that that isn't a reality, but it is, and it's the reality for a lot of kids. And if you out these kids, there are going to be kids dying from this. There is going to be kids killing themselves, there's going to be kids being abused, and there's going to be kids being murdered, and their blood is going to be on your hands. We're not gonna allow this to happen as a community. We're going to fight this, we're going to protest.
30
and
seconds.
we just can't allow this. And I don't know how I got to this place that this is even being considered, because it is dangerous and people are going to die.
Judy? Judy?
There's a lot of Judys in this world, so I wasn't sure who you were referring to, but nobody else responded. My name's Judy Farnetti. I'm a mother of 2 daughters and a gay son. I'm an LGBTQ ally, as you can see, and I'm also a retired school board member myself, 20 years. And I absolutely adamantly oppose this policy. This isn't a policy protecting parental rights. It's a policy allowing abdication of parental responsibility. I cannot believe that that parents would assume that it's the responsibility of the school district to tell them this type of personal information about their child. They should already know that. And if they don't, they're not paying attention. And we've already put so much onus on teachers. I mean, they are disciplinarian, abuse
30
detective,
seconds.
counselor, school supply provider, and now you want to add this additional burden on them? It's shameful. And as a former school board member, I can't believe this is happening in our community. The politics that have been brought into this community, where school boards once were a politics-free area, and it's changed. And I'm sorry to hear that.
Riley? Is there a Riley Naimi? Riley? Castile?
Okay. Hello, I'm Castiel. This is a name I gave myself because I'm non-binary. I live in a household where this fact is treated as a product of my environment rather than a part of who I am. Last year, I officially changed my name and pronouns in the school system. Words cannot describe the joy it brought me to see and hear my name in school and have my gender affirmed. I have the utmost respect and gratitude to the teachers and staff who gave me a place in this world without the fear that I would be outed to my transphobic father. Since he forced me to come out, we have fought and I've cried too many times to count. He's dived deeper into a world of literature and people who confirm his biases, like many of the people here today, all in the name of loving me. This rejection has not been loving. In fact, it has brought me to the brink of suicide. I'm standing here if only for the friends and family who have supported me and the environment school gave me to be my authentic self. I am standing here as one of the many who are outcasts in their bodies and in their own homes. Parents' rights do not include the right to encroach on their children's privacy. There was a reason I came out at school and not at home. I consider myself lucky that I'm not treated with the violence and utter abandonment many other trans youths face. Outing children and teens to their parents not only puts transgender youths in harm's way, it violates our rights as autonomous human beings.
Emil Barham, followed by Nola.
Hi, folks. This is a whirlwind here. First of all, this policy deals with gender dysphoria, which the American Psychiatric Association classifies as a mental medical disorder. The schools have an obligation when kids get hurt physically to notify the parents. At the same time, since this is a medical condition, I see it as the schools have an obligation to inform the parents of this situation. In addition to that, the teachers, any school official they are not qualified to assess what this condition is. There is no teacher that is qualified medically to assess this. There is no counselor,
30 seconds.
okay, that is qualified to assess this. And maybe even a psychologist might be able to help a little bit. I do think it's real. I think that parents need to be notified. And I want to say something to you, Allison and Steve. This is up close and personal, okay? This is not CRT. This is not social studies curriculum. This is a losing issue for you because it's.
Thank you.
Luella?
Hello? Okay, it's Noella, thank you. And I am a parent here in TVUSD. 1 in 1,500 human beings is born visually intersex or non-binary. 1 in 500 are born not visually, non-binary. With the number of students that we have in our district, that means that over 52 students could possibly be transgender. 52 students, are you willing to lose their lives? If they are not talking to their parents, that is because they don't trust their parents. People keep talking about family bond, but if a child doesn't trust a parent, this is why they don't speak. People are talking about family rights or parents' rights, but those are already there. A child cannot legally or medically go get any type of surgery or medical care without their parent. Further, those surgeries are not covered by insurance. They must be paid for with a lot of money. So that's something that a parent has to agree to and sign off on. So passing this is only going to be causing harm. It's not going to be protecting anyone. So all of these false equivalencies are lies, misinformation. Please do your research on the Travis Project as well as intersex.com to know the truth.
Oh, that's it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So my thought on this is it is pretty late. I'd like to speak last, and then once a motion's made, we'll have post-motion discussion. I open up to anybody. And I would ask kindly that everyone gets to speak before there's interchange between board members.
Can we just go down the line?
Sure. Mr. Gonzalez, if you want to start.
Yeah, I'm fine to start. Leaving so soon? All right. I'm going to do it a little, sorry. I'm going to do it a little in reverse because there are a few things with proposed board policy 5020.1 that I don't like, and I want to get those out of the way and just have a discussion about it. Specifically, in this proposed board policy, section number 5, I just want to be clear about this because it's come up a number of occasions, and twice tonight, Edgar and I agree on something, and that is that students do have a First Amendment right to protest, and that should be protected. There are specifically at least 7 board policies and different ed code that are cited that address how protests are handled. Protests that are disruptive are viewed as disturbances, and there are consequences for protests that are disruptive to the learning environment. Regardless of that, the rules are applied equally in most cases. The problem here is a communication problem, and when those are not handled equally, students should not be treated unequally depending on the subject matter of what they're protesting. So when students are out in front of Chaparral High School protesting against a decision by the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade, those students are treated differently than students that decline to wear masks in protest at Temecula Middle School and are threatened to be disenrolled from school. That is the problem with the protests. I think that the language that requires permission slips would effectively make school protests that are student sanctioned, school sanctioned. And this would open the district up to increased liability. This new board policy cannot weaken or strip the constitutional rights of students to be heard while advocating for the natural rights of parents. It's hypocritical. Items numbers 6, 7, and 8 are also already covered under a number of board policies, and I believe we have a communication problem with these and not a policy issue. I find merit in all of these areas, but I think they are better addressed by working with admin staff to clarify AR and the exhibits related to each one of these individual items. Speaking to the main I cut myself off. Speaking to the main portion of this policy, I honestly found it troubling that TVUSD has implemented a policy that lies to parents. This is a policy issue that needs to be addressed. The Constitution enumerates the rights of parents in the 14th Amendment. It has been upheld in the Supreme Court that these natural rights for parents to provide for the care, custody, companionship, and management of their children cannot be removed without just cause, including abandonment, neglect, substance disorder, or mental physical disability. Current administrative regulation 5145.3 violates the Constitution directly in its presumption of guilt without just cause. In this policy, it states, as appropriate, the coordinator shall discuss with the student any need to disclose the student's transgender or gender nonconformity status to his, her parents, guardians, and or others, including other students, teachers, or other adults on campus. Any decision to disclose the student's status to others should be based on the student's best interest. It's my argument that no one is better suited to determine what is in a student's best interest than their parents. It has been argued that outing a student would expose them to harm. This policy does nothing to undermine the privacy of students in conversations with teachers or counselors. A parent would be notified if a student wants to publicly transition. We know based on data that these students are at increased risk for anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and sexual abuse, regardless of whether it is concealed from a parent or not. Shielding a parent from these truths robs parents of the ability to support their student and educate themselves accordingly. This great district is here to support all students and encourage each of you to reach your full potential. Your kids do not belong to the government. We do not co-parent as a school district. We should offer support, resources, and anything else needed to facilitate the success of our students, and you, the parent, are fundamental in this effort. The rights of parents to be involved in these conversations are fundamental to repairing the broken trust between families and public education. I would support adopting the policy as written, the same in Chino, the same in Marietta, and striking the additional language.
unpack here. Well, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. You took half of what I was going to talk about, but thank you. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm not going to really get into that, but just as he said, there's no possible way we can require written permission for protests on or off campus. So if a kid is holding up a sign saying we hate peanut butter and jelly on Tuesday and they walk in a circle, they don't need a permission slip. They are exhibiting their First Amendment right, and we can't stop that. And again, 6, 7, 8, they're covered. There's no need. Moving to the other piece. This is a difficult subject. There are completely valid arguments on both sides of this subject. As a parent, of course I want to know what's going on with my child, 100%. But if my child hasn't told me that, I don't feel it's the responsibility of anyone to tell me that. It's between me and my child on this subject. And we're not talking about kids who are necessarily transitioning. It just says if they want to use a different name or pronoun. And there are kids who want to just try that out and see how that feels. And by requiring teachers to notify parents, it's a slippery slope. I think kids need to feel that they have trusted adults that they can go to. If not their teacher, then who? It was brought up by a public comment tonight that if they don't have a teacher, where are they gonna go? The internet, their friends, the guy on the corner who is trying to sex traffic kids? I mean, there's lots of other people that they can go to. But without a teacher or a trusted adult, that's a difficult situation. And from speaking with kids and teachers are not trying to keep secrets from parents. That's not the goal of teachers. When we talk about our multi-tiered system of support, that's exactly what we're talking about, is that if a child is coming to you and they have any concerns in their life whatsoever, I'm sad because my dog died. Whatever it is, a teacher is going to provide support. It doesn't mean that the parent is not involved. Absolutely, no school is trying to co-parent, but what kid or what parent wouldn't want their child to have an extra caring adult in their life? I've loved that for my kids in many ways. At church, with neighbors, with other family friends, an extra caring adult in their life, and this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about kids necessarily transitioning. The other issue that we have here is the legal issue. So CDE does have an interpretation of this, and that is who oversees our district. We are a governmental agency. Whether people like that or not, whether people agree with the government in the state of California or not, irrespective of that, we are a governmental agency. And the instruction that has been given to us by the people who fund us, who hold the purse strings, are that this cannot happen. And it's been said to Chino, it's been said to Murrieta, and now it's going to be said to us, and we're just going to be in line for another lawsuit. In addition, one of the most troubling pieces for me is that there is actual ed code about what counselors can and cannot tell parents. And this includes that counselors would have to tell parents. And that violates ed code 49602. So we're asking teachers to knowingly, they have to choose ed code and state law versus board policy. Well, what that results in is that you don't follow board policy, you have to follow the higher authority. So if a counselor is told something by a student, they cannot follow this board policy, they have to follow ed code by law, 49602. So this is what is making this policy really difficult for us in this district. And again, if we don't like the laws, if people here don't like the laws, there are ways to remedy that. But as a district, public district funded by the state of California, there are guidelines and rules. And I think it's important that we get back to that. I know that hasn't been observed in a lot of facets of the board this year, but we are a public entity and we need to follow the laws.
lot of papers, but I'm not going to read them all. This is a statement I gave to the press the other day when I was asked, and I spoke for myself. I just want to repeat it, so if you see it, you'll know I said it. Teachers are already mandated reporters for abuse. This policy is going to put teachers in the terrible position, possibly creating punishment in the home. That is not to say all parents would react in that way, but perhaps some would. Teachers have already been recognized as protectors of students. If a child doesn't feel safe, being honest with a teacher will not help that child to feel safe at home. So where does this leave us? This is now an opportunity for parents to create a safe space at home so that their children are struggling with a difficult issue, they can be open about it. To be frank, perhaps the district could offer workshops for parents to help create a safe home environment. And I love that phrase, trauma-free education. Let's try to keep that. Chico School District in Northern California implemented this policy. It was brought to court. Senior U.S. District Judge John Mendez said the district policy in question is not proactive, but reactive. District staff are not directed to force students to adopt transgender identities or keep their identities secret from their parents. Staff must affirm a student's expressed identity and pronouns and tell only those whom students want to be told, with an exception for the student's health. The district said in court filings that there are circumstances where disclosure to parents of what students tell counselors can lead to harm to students. And the district has a legitimate state interest in protecting students' privacy and creating a zone of protection. I spoke with one of our board attorneys today in response to my question about the legality of the proposed Parent Notification Action Item 1. She said, please see attached letter from the Attorney General addressed to Chino Valley Unified School District regarding its new policy on parental notification of a student request to use a name or pronoun other than those listed on the student's birth certificate or in official records. A student requests to participate in programs or to use facilities that do not align with the gender stated in these records. Or 3, when a student requests to change any information in their official or unofficial school records. The authority cited the Attorney General's letter is accurate. To answer your question more specifically, in sum, the district is not obligated to disclose any information to parents other than that which is contained within education records of their child. I could read the whole thing, but I think that's enough to say this policy is illegal. It will open us up to another lawsuit. I got this one today in the mail, the first lawsuit. The second letter came to us this week threatening another lawsuit if we don't follow certain actions, and this certainly will create a third.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Ms. Worsnell?
So I want to say the interesting thing about this is way back in March, Dr. Komrosky and I were discussing parental rights even before Congress passed their bill. And I think it's because we so strongly believed as we worked in the community and met so many people that that was of paramount concern. And what I want to reiterate tonight is that it's about first principles. People raise children, not systems, not organizations, not schools. It is about people and families. And I think that we cannot assume that a majority of parents are abusers. We all love our kids. We know there's situations that are difficult, and we fully defend taking our obligations seriously as mandated reporters. We have to be diligent. There are safeguards in place, and we recognize that for those who are in need. The survey information for AB 665 about minors and mental health services, it states that 78% of LGBT students are considering suicide or have at one time. And if this is indeed the case, many of these situations with our students would and should be evaluated with a parent. And I think with Ed Code, we are determined to follow that and do what we need to do, looking at the counselor, looking at the age of the child. All of those come into play, and we take that very seriously. California is failing our children's mental health, and preventative care is failing. It ranks as 48th in the nation. We care about our students, regardless of their ethnicity, their sexuality, their orientation. It is not tribal when you involve parents. Parents are the best tribe. Our families are the best supporters of our children in most every situation. The thing that I would also like to add is, in looking at some of the things that we added, Mr. Gonzalez, there was one aspect that we were considering in terms of the third party coming onto campus. And I think the discussion there was the fact that there was somebody who came to Great Oak a little over a year ago, Cousin Danny, and I think in looking at that particular situation, I think in realizing if that social media had been more carefully vetted, if a parent had looked at that on a list or on the school site, that might have been something that somebody would have looked into. I know that we're all busy. Our schools do a great job of trying to vet as much as they can, but that was a situation that proved to be offensive for a lot of parents and for students as well. And so that is what brought to mind for me the idea that we as a community can look at those third parties coming onto campus. There was a report in Orange County of Planned Parenthood being one of those entities. And so parents should have notice if somebody like that is going to be on the campus. I think that that's an important safeguard for our students. I understand what you're saying about the walkouts. I think we've discussed that and the fact that permission slips and things wouldn't be workable. I think it's very important for parents to know about the walkouts, if whether it's in the planning or on the back end, because there were students upset that they didn't go back to school. They ended up at Pachanga or at the park and just weren't accounted for. So I think that concern came in there. The bottom line is I want families to be in this together. And I think that we have the opportunity in most circumstances to encourage that. That's what we want to see. Parental rights, it is in the 14th Amendment. This was vetted by many lawyers, including two of our own. It's been looked at by a plethora of legal counsel, including constitutional attorneys Dean Broyles, Harmeet Dillon, Kevin Snyder. Mr. Huff has looked at this. Mr. Brenner has looked at this. We've had several districts pass it. I believe Shasta this evening, they passed it as well. And it is not to discriminate or to out or to make our students feel less than. It is to, excuse me.
You know what? Come on.
It is to give families that support that they need and that opportunity for students to continue to build that bond with their mom and their dad and their tribe that loves them. And if there's a circumstance that needs to be communicated because that's outside the norm with a student, then we will have those safeguards in place. And that is important to us as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wiersma. So I will just say that we and the teachers, I'm sure all the board members agree, we love these kids and we want what's best for them. I also know that parents love their children and feel passionately about them. And with rare exception, parents will always love their children more and deeper than any other adult, including a trusted teacher. Our nation has consistently maintained that parents possess a fundamental right to raise their children as they see fit. This belief has been upheld in numerous Supreme Court cases that reflect American people's longstanding commitment to parental rights, known as the parental rights doctrine. You can go to a website. There's 14 Supreme Court cases that uphold this, and I won't read through them all. Minor children do not have privacy rights from their parents. The bigger ethical issue is teaching children to lie to their parents. And no, just because children don't feel comfortable talking to their parents does not mean that they're bad parents. It's fairly standard in adolescence and puberty for kids to despise their parents and keep things from them. If there was a problem with a bad parent, teachers are already mandated reporters, and they should connect with law enforcement if there is a legitimate concern about a child's safety at home in any situation. If a teacher is not willing to report a parent to the law enforcement, then they already have a responsibility to communicate with parents as they would with bad grades, discipline issues in class, and other concerns. Living with someone who is transgender is incredibly hard, even if everyone around you is affirming. We've heard a lot of people that are transgender. I've literally, me personally, I've listened to the entire Chino meeting. I attended the Murrieta meeting. I've listened to the entire Orange meeting. I've listened to all the comments here. We can hash this out. We can debate this till the sun goes down. We'll probably disagree on the board, but I've heard so many different voices, and I mean it when I say it. I mean, there is a real problem with gender dysphoria and transgenderism and suicide. I get it. So in that context, most transgender people, they'll be a medical patient for their life. All the drugs and surgeries that they will endure will have lots of side effects. They will be denied the ability to have children of their own because they will be sterile and will struggle to find a mate who does not want children of their own. Suicide rates are incredibly high for those who are in transition through the dysphoria, even after receiving all the drugs and surgeries. This also brings out the concept of outing of the kids. I've heard this many times in Chino, Murrieta, here, Orange. This is nonsense. On the issue of kids being outed, this is a false description because they're not outing anyone. The kids are electing to publicly identify as a different gender. They're asking the school to assign them a new name, new pronouns, or use of new different facilities. The child is identifying as a new gender at school. The school is participating in the gender reassignment, even if it's socially. And all we're simply saying is that when a school is informed by the student, that the parents are also informed. So it's not outing. They're not going out and sniffing out kids that might be identifying as trans and telling their parents. This does not get triggered unless the students themselves elect to be publicly identified as a new gender on campus. That's what we're talking about. You know what's funny? You know who wrote that part right there? Bill Asaley. And here's the greatest thing of all. He's not a Christian nationalist. He's of the Muslim faith. But even more, he's a parent, and he loves his kids. I stand on the backs of giants like Mary Barkey and Bill Asaley, who cared enough about their kids to risk this policy when I was in my diapers being sworn in, so to speak. And these people have done the heavy lifting. And Bill Asaley, I will tell you, your voice wasn't heard in assembly. It was heard by me and thousands of other parents across the state. And not only that, I was voted in. Yes, I was voted in by trustee area 4, but I represent all the students in the district and the parents in the district. And it says defend parental rights. This is my promise to the parents, and I am keeping it. I am here now. Thank you. So as we move on a little bit, one can't imagine a loving parent wanting their child to avoid all the hardship, if at all possible, regardless. You know, most parents don't agree with all their children's life choices, and yet they want to be involved in their child's lives no matter what the circumstance. You can imagine a family member that might be identifying a certain way, and the parents might not approve of it, but doesn't mean they don't love them. They just don't approve of a certain lifestyle or a behavior. I could discipline my son 10 times till Friday because he's doing something wrong. I might not approve of his behavior, but I love him nevertheless. And yes, I would die for him in a second. And my daughter, Chloe, both of them. And so no one is more important to the mental health of a child than their own parents. Separating children from their parents does them psychological harm and causes a great deal of stress. Parents are no longer going to consider schools safe places for kids if parents are being branded by these schools, Newsom, Bonta, Thurman, as potentially dangerous. This wedge that Newsom, Bonta, and Thurman are attempting to use to divide the parents from their kids in an educational setting is dangerous territory, and I'm not going to have it on my watch. With that, Mr. Gonzalez, you raise a good point, and Mr. Diaz caught it earlier. So on section 5, on B, there is, I'll read it to you. Notify the parents, guardians promptly in advance if there is a student-sponsored protest being planned during school hours on or off campus. I would strike out everything past that comment, and the school will require parent, guardian written permission prior to the child's participation, and I would strike all that out except for C. I talked to General Legal, General Legal said it becomes a school-sponsored activity then. Administrators are now involved in collecting permission slips. We can't precondition speech, as noted Mr. Gonzalez. We can't restrict the rights of students as they have free speech rights, so we can't restrict their right to assemble and their right to express themselves only if the parents consent, as this would be a First Amendment violation. So that would be stricken off. The reason that I added to this policy is because we're not Chino, we're not Marietta, and we're not Orange. We individuate as a school district. We have our own unique set of problems. One of them is campus walkouts. We literally dealt with that with CRT. It was just insane what happened. One of our school board members was participating in that walkout. Some parents didn't know where their kids were. Some parents, their freaking kids were at the Pechanga Resort. And this was just insanity. And this right here just tightens it up, saying, look, we're going to notify the parents if there's an on or off campus walkout. They're free to assemble how they want, but that's what makes us different from any other district. Chino and Marietta, they didn't have school walkouts. We did. 6, when I heard the voice of a parent long ago that it might have been Great Oak. It was a school in Mr. Schwartz's area. I don't know what school it was, but there was a parent down there, and they said that their teachers were accusing a student of stealing something of theirs. So all these backpacks got searched, and this particular student, their backpack got searched 3 times, and so it was viewed as kind of a harassment. So I remembered that parent's story, and I said, you know what, I'm thinking about you, so I put that on here. As simple as that. 7, third party coming to campus. Yes, we all know Danny Cousins. We all know there was a lot of parents who thought Danny Cousins sexualized the kids on the first day of school. That's disgraceful. I want to protect the parents from that, the students from that, and get the parents involved and say, hey man, whether it's a pastor coming from a church and somebody goes, I don't want a pastor, great, pull your kid out. We want to give you advance notice. They're a third party vendor or a third party person coming. It goes both ways. It could go with somebody possibly sexualizing a kid. It could go to somebody introducing animals at a student club. It could go to a pastor. We just want to know, the parents want to know, who's coming. And I'll tell you why. If there's somebody controversial that comes just one more time, because we've already had this crap a year ago, or on the first day of school. If this happens again, I'm not going to sit up here and tell the parents, look, I tried to defend you. I tried to institute this to protect you. I don't want to let this go. I want these parents to know in advance. They could have went on and looked at Danny Cousins' page and said, this is crap. I don't want him coming here. They didn't have that chance. They didn't have advance notice. Last, I read off books that I thought were highly inappropriate. This is just me. I'm only one board member. I read off Push. I read off, gosh, I forget the name, so we can look at the other board meeting. With that being said, yes, parents know about the physical and digital libraries. What about all in-kind donations? What about that? I want to know, where are these books coming from? It is not just, they're not just magically showing up to the library. Somebody, some human agent wants it there. I want the parents to know who put it there. Where are the in-kind donations coming from? Whether it's a library or a classroom, they have the right to know. They don't just magically appear there. So with that being said, I will say that 2 sets of legal counsel have reviewed 5 through 8. The only problem was the clause that I would strip off, and the school will require parent, guardian, written permission prior to the child's participation, and that would be struck off. There's one more point. 3 constitutional lawyers have looked at this from Chino, 3. One's Harmeet Dillon, very famous. And so I've heard all the arguments going back and forth. This is illegal. Nonsense. This has already been vetted. And I think one of the comments was, if it was illegal, it would have already been shut down by now. There would have already been lawsuits against this exact policy. That's why Thurman, I'm gonna try to be professional when I say this. Thurman, Bonta, and Newsom haven't done anything because they can't. They just want to troll our school district, and I'm tired of it. So I'm going to make a motion to approve this without a second reading, striking the language after the comma, and a substitute after the comma would be a semicolon on paragraph 5. And it would strike out the "and the school will require parent guardian written permission prior to the child's participation, semicolon, and." That would be struck out. You would be starting with the C. Do I have a second?
I thought you said we were going to finish
Yeah,
discussion.
are we not gonna have any discussion prior
Post-motion
to?
discussion. Oh, okay. I said I would make a motion to allow post-motion, but, okay, so.
Okay, but now
that
you've got a
being
motion
said-
on the floor, and now we would have to amend that motion, right?
No,
If we wanted to move forward with anything?
So I put a motion on with that language
And if I
amended.
second it, can we then talk?
Yeah, no,
Because the
it's
motion now is
post-motion
the
discussion. We're gonna open it up.
Yeah, I just think a little bit of discussion, if you don't mind, you did respond to a couple of my points on this.
Yeah.
I'd like to just kind of go back to what you're saying, because I understand the desire, and as I said, I do see merit in notification on every single one of these. What I see being the main difference is that there is no policy expressly prohibiting us from doing any of those things. And I think even with the walkout and the protests that you saw, our district staff did a very good job of communicating with those students and with letting the parents know and doing as much as they could within their power to let parents know that these were being planned, that they were monitoring them, so it's a communication issue, and I understand that parents didn't know what was going on. It is a communication issue. I think it's hard to enforce, though, and if we're going to tell just the language, I mean, this is policy, understand. This is not being put into an administrative regulation or some type of an exhibit on how we deal with these protests more specifically, which is a lot of the work that we've been doing recently. In board policy, that's it. What it says in the language is operative. That's what we are bound by, and that's what's going to guide all of the decision making in that language for the administrative regulation. I mean, Ms. Velez and I sat down and had this conversation before we even knew this was on the agenda, because I've been watching what's going on. I've been reading the room, and it was probably coming to a theater near us soon, right? So we pulled out all of these administrative regulations and understood all of the work that's even going to have to go into this before this is even enforceable. And I think it's important that we make that clear, is that just because this policy gets adopted, that language that's in that board policy doesn't become effective or enforceable until such time as you go through every one of those administrative regulations, you go through all of those policies, and then you sit down with all of the teachers and staff and you make sure that it's very clear ahead of time before this thing would be enforceable. And I want to make sure that if we're going to put language in there, that the language is clear. It is impossible for staff to know every student-led protest that may potentially become part of the school system. I mean, what do you consider a protest? Because protest can be a lot of different things. It can be wearing a shirt, it can be wearing a badge, it can be, and then what are we talking about with participation? So if they have a protest at school that's during lunchtime, and even if a student is participating, maybe he wants to go hear what his classmates think about an issue. He may not be there necessarily to support it, but wants to go participate and hear them out and hear what they have to say on the subject. So I just think that entire language it's harmful. I don't think that it does what you intend it to do. I think that we should look at the administrative regulation regarding protests and how those are handled and disruptions, rather than trying to put it in this process. So I would be fine with compromising on the other language, because I don't think that there's anything in it that we don't already do. And there is a lot of crossover, I know, with policies, but that specific language, I would ask that you strike that number 5 completely before we approve any policy.
So just to let you know too, now, and I know you talked about administrative regulations. I sat down with Dr. Velez a couple days ago, and 2 attorneys have already interlaced administrative regulation language to where it's all the language that you see now has pretty much been interlaced through our already existing administrative regulated policies. But that's done by the district. We don't have, well, we're not directly involved in that. But once we pass board policy, you are right. I mean, it's the real deal. But the district can handle how that gets implemented. And it might not even be word for word, by the way, through this. They might change language because it's like the how. How is this going to be implemented? So I've already sat down, and you might say some of the heavy lifting on the ARs have been done by 2 lawyers to where they have language. They just have to sit down and say, how do we implement it? My question with number 5, though, is how are parents notified on possible protests on or off campus? And I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so can I backtrack just a moment? I think on 5, 6, 7, and 8, Mr. Gonzalez, I heard you earlier before talk about kind of striking this language out of the board policy. The one thing that I think staff would recommend in this case is we do have existing board policy already that addresses so much of this that it would be staff's recommendation that these pieces have further discussion and come back. Because we do, for example, the item, I think it is about searches, number 6, there's already board policy that exists in regards to searches. So we already have existing policy. So I think the collaborative work that we have done, just in terms of even just the controversial issues policy, I would prefer on 5, 6, 7, and 8, I'm only going to keep my comments to that we come back and we have a discussion to see what's already existing. If there is required changes in the board policy, requested changes, we have no problem kind of having that collaborative discussion. But we will see a conflict on 5, 6, 7, and 8 with already existing board policy in practice.
What about existing board policy with in-kind donations? I've asked, you know, a couple months ago, Mrs. Diaz very politely on a book, I said, hey, can we get the first and last name to know who put this book, Push, in the Chaparral Library? And she said that really all we have is a barcode, unless you found out more information after that. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Mrs. Diaz, it's a legitimate concern. If you say we already have existing policy, then how would the parents know what the in-kind donations are?
Can I answer that? We do have a policy for donations. And this is separate from the question about that book, because we don't know if that was a donation or what it was. So I'm not answering that question. But I am saying that we do have a policy on donations. In fact, we've discussed it a little bit under library and our committee for board policy 6000. Our libraries are required to go through the same vetting process. A wonderful citizen may drop off a box of books because they've just cleaned out their study, but we just don't take all those books and put them in the library. There's an adherence to a structure of vetting those books to barcode them, and they're all labeled in Destiny once they arrive, and they are agreed upon. There are many books that we redonate because they don't meet the scope, the appropriateness, the content, the subject area that our librarians, especially our lead librarian, are well-versed in establishing.
Thank you. What about in-kind donations that teachers have in their classrooms separate from the library? Can you have an in-kind donation go straight to a teacher in a classroom, or does it have to come through the library?
I see this as being a part of the work that we're doing with supplemental material and board policy, the other board policy. I don't necessarily see that directly related to what's stated here, Dr. Komrosky.
Okay, so
that's been some of the I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that has been some of the conversation as well, as there is a lot of overlap going on here. And I know that with the work on board policy 6000, a lot of this stuff is actually being covered. I think that's a great opportunity if Ms. Wiersma or if you and Ms. Wiersma, I'm not sure who's working on that.
We are.
But open up the administrative regulation. I promise you, Dr. Velez is happy to walk through it and to propose changes to it. That's the work that we get to do. And I'm telling you, it's really productive going through it in that way and being more collaborative about it than just a board policy. The parent notification on the other stuff, it's got to be changed because we have policy that lies.
The one thing I want to say right here is
so.
that Dr. Komrosky has spent so many hours. I just want to tell you the heavy lifting and what you've committed to doing for students and for the district. I understand and totally honor what you're saying. And I think that it just needs to be said that those things have been communicated and you've spent the time. I just want to thank you because I know the kind of time that it's taken to try to do what's right and to personalize it and to look at who we are and not be another district. What can we do for the best of our students and stakeholders?
So I think what we're hearing is that Dr. Komrosky did all the work, but there wasn't collaboration on this. Where are the teachers and the administrators who have to enforce these rules? Or the fact that, you know, like Mr. Gonzalez is bringing up, we already have these policies. I just think it's unfortunate that it's brought here as an action item instead of a discussion item, because if we could discuss it more and just pull it and go through it and collect a little bit more feedback on this entire thing, and really make sure that, you know, that your ideas and everyone's ideas match with what is legal, what parents want, what students want, that we can get something that could be a compromise. But I think the problem is it was done in a vacuum, you know, and I understand, Joe, you have spent a lot of time on this, and that's admirable. But putting in one sentence because of one thing one parent said, when we haven't really vetted with teachers or security, how is this possible? How does this work? What other rules do we have? I think that's where I think some of us are feeling a little bit confused, because I don't think that even on number 7, that you're gonna notify parents in advance on the website, only on the website, not email, not a note sent home, not a newsletter on the bottom, but only on the website of a third party coming onto campus to present to students. Teachers all the time have a guest speaker come in, and mostly, I'm assuming most of the time, communicate that with the parents. But this is, I mean, and if you want to see parents not reading stuff, you put a list of every single one of these on the website. Nobody's going to read that. So I think we need to be considerate about just more information. Flooding people with information isn't necessarily meaning that they're going to be able to read it. We've got to be careful about it.
I might agree.
And you know, measure that, because more emails, people are just going to throw
I
in the
actually might
trash.
agree with you there, but how do we prevent against the Danny Cousins?
Well, that's what we should discuss.
I think we learned a
should
lesson
discuss.
there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, though.
Yeah, like it's
Because
on the radar now, like,
Well,
yeah,
sure.
it
but
lit up the
absolutely,
grid.
even when we're looking at approving vendors, we need to do a better job as a board of vetting these people and making sure that they're not gonna go outside of, you know, what is scripted, which I think was the description we got for what happened.
And
at that.
unfortunately, sometimes that's how we learn a lesson. Unfortunately, that something has to happen, then we go, oh my gosh, our process isn't good enough. Let's talk to people and fix it for moving forward.
But
We're never going to prevent every single thing from happening, as much as we really want to protect our students. It's just not possible. But I think more review of this, getting more input, teachers might even have better ideas than we have. So that's my suggestion.
All right,
I
Mr.
think
Schwartz, I think,
specifically
wanted to say something.
for those items, I think what we're talking about is working through that more collaboratively on 5, 6, 7, 8. I just think it's a smarter decision.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion, and, because what I'm getting at is, I heard board policy 6,000
Not anymore.
overlaps. No, we're gonna do post-motion discussion. Fine, Mr. Schwartz, do you wanna say something? I was trying to get
No,
you.
you know, as the only one here who's been in a classroom and dealt with being a mandated reporter and having reported abuse, I'm not saying it happened every day or every week, but it was fairly frequent. I'm a parent, I have my own children, I love them to death, I would do anything for them, but there are parents out there who are not loving parents. I'm not accusing anybody, I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, but I think we need to protect our children, and one of the things I would like to do, to add to this amendment, to this proposal, is to give students a chance to opt out. School board should create,
Please be respectful, people.
you know, I have nothing more to say. If we're gonna be scoffed at as board members, and you're not gonna enforce the policy, I'm sorry, that's not fair. I'd like to read my statement and read it in peace without people snickering and laughing.
You did
And
hear
I know
me-
who they were.
You did hear me bang a gavel, just keep
No,
on
I
reading.
didn't.
Oh, okay, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
School board should create a supportive and confidential process for students to utilize the opt-out option. This process should protect the privacy and safety of students who choose to opt out and include clear guidelines for requesting an opt-out. This process shall also include provisions for how teachers and other school staff can support students who have opted out, including providing resources and referrals to outside organizations if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
So, I wanted to go back to Mrs. Diaz. Thank you so much for reminding me about the board policy 6,000, because it really does cover 8. And from what I'm hearing, 5 through 7 we already have it covered. And you know, especially 7, when I talk about lighting up the grid with Danny Cousins and all that, like it just, we know when third parties come in. I heard you, Mrs. Barclay, when you said, look, we just flood people and then they're not even going to read the emails. So I had a motion on the floor, but I didn't have a second last time. I'm going to move to adopt the policy as is from either Marietta or Chino. It doesn't matter which one, but you have to change the language to Temecula. That way, when you strike out 5 through 8, 9 changes. If that makes sense, Dr. Velez. So rather than using the policy that you have in front of us, pick either the Marietta or Chino, it doesn't even matter, just change the language to Temecula.
Didn't we have that?
Because that way, number 9, hold on, order.
Dr. Komrosky, for a clarification point, the Chino and the Marietta, are they exactly the same?
Yes, and it's basically taking out the language and adding Temecula. That way, number 9 doesn't cause a headache for district, because 9 supervenes on 5 through 8. With that saying, the motion will include the waiving of a second reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Wiersman. Now we're going to go into post-motion discussion.
So, I mean, I feel a little unprepared since I didn't give as close of inspection to those board policies as I did to our own. However, I'm still concerned that it has counselors in there. There is a specific ed code that exempt that, and it goes through exactly what they have to report, and that is not included.
So in our rationale, if you look, this proposed policy is, give me a second here. At the same time, this policy also respects and protects the limited confidentiality and disclosure restrictions that exist under the law regarding pupils aged 12 years or older received in the process of counseling from a school counselor per Ed Code Section 49602, and the specific reporting requirements and restrictions under applicable law for mandated reporters. So that's covered in the rationale.
Also for students 11 and under, it doesn't apply. And I want to point out that I had somebody in Orange County tell me that just the other day, it was a 1st or 2nd grade little boy that walked into the girls' bathroom and said that he was a girl. And so that's why we're looking at these policies too, because it's for protection of the kids all the way around. And these were young children, just happened the other day. So it's really important to know it doesn't just apply to 12 and up. It's our elementary school children. So it's important.
The parents should be involved in that. It's not outing a student just because they're talking to a trusted adult about having concerns or questioning what's going on. Kids should have an outlet and be able to go talk to those people.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying under 1A. That's true for the first sentence. But when you get to the second sentence, it says, this includes any request by the student to use a name that differs from their legal name other than a commonly recognized diminutive of the child's legal name, or to use pronouns that do not align with the student's biological sex or gender listed. So still, like the first part, yes, if they want to change their records, that's one thing. But the second one, it is just saying to use a different name, not even change their records.
Or pronoun, right.
Right, so
I
if
can
they
clear
ask,
that
so
for
if they
you.
tell a counselor, I would like you to call me a different name, this is saying the counselor has to report it. This is saying the counselor cannot report it. Because there are only limited things a counselor is allowed to report. So I'm just saying we should, a minimum,
It's definitely something that should.
we should remove counselors from there.
I don't think we should remove it, but it's definitely something that has to be addressed in administrative regulation to clarify. The board policy cannot get as detailed as the administrative regulation, and then I'm sure there'll be other things that are attachments as well to help to clarify what that process looks like. And there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration on how to do it properly. And obviously, there's already concerns by the union on how, whether or not this creates additional work for them. All of these things have to be gone through, but the start of the process is a policy that affirms that parents have the rights to be involved in the decisions. Then we need to go through thoughtfully and figure out how to make that happen.
But there's no decision if a child just says, can you call me Sam instead of John? I mean, there's no, like, I don't understand why that needs to rise to the level of 72 hours written notice to a parent.
What would be the challenge or the, like, what would be the drawback from having the parent and saying, hey, your kid's kind of asking us to call him Sam. Their legal name's John. Not sure if there's an issue or if you're aware of this, but like,
well,
what are you concerned with, right?
I'm concerned about where it leads, that it leads to kids, because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. So right now, we're debating the fine points of this.
Well,
What's going to be heard across wherever is that teachers are going to out kids. We can say whatever we want. We can put out a press release. We can do whatever. That's what's going to be heard by this passing. And that's what these kids are worried about. And so we are not supporting the kids who are coming here saying, we're nervous about this. We're afraid of this. As a board, we could say, we hear you kids. Let's pull this back and have a little bit more discussion with you, because you can see where we're coming from and we're hearing where you're coming from. So how can we come together so that we can make sure parents are notified and that people aren't keeping secrets, but that you as a youth feel comfortable and we see you and we hear you? That's what I'm saying. Because we can debate the finer points, but I guarantee you what these kids are hearing and what people are going to say tomorrow is, this policy outs kids.
Right.
Mrs.
Which
Barclay
is
and
false,
Mr.
but-
Gonzalez.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Only because we talked about this behind the scenes. Will you let each one of us talk first and then we can interchange? No, I know, but we're stuck on you two, and I just want to let Mr. Schwartz and then Mrs. Wursma and then me, and then we can open it up. Only because we talked about this beforehand. Mr. Schwartz. I just want everybody to
I can't
have their
add
voice heard.
anything to what the young people who came here and put themselves out in public. I can't add anything to what they said. I just looked up the statistics of suicide from the National Institute of Health for transgender children. It's between 32 and 50%. So what Allison just said is basically what's going to come out of this meeting. Teachers are going to be outing students, and I don't think we should put them in that position, and I don't think as a board we should take that position. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
I believe what should come out of this meeting is that we're building bridges with parents. It's as simple as that. We want children to have the support of mom and dad. We want them to have the support of guardians. This is where we're at. The CDE offers guidance. But again, I just think it's important for the school board to pass policy understanding, implementation changes, things that need to take place. We want to work through that. But this work has been done, and it's exemplary, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Wursma. I'm going to truncate my long-winded speech here, and I'll just try to shorten it. The whole point of what I'm going to say now is a moral argument. Forget politics. A lot of people say, oh, you're following your political whims. Forget that. This is a moral argument, and it's timeless, and I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to relate it to Ed Code, just so that everybody knows what I'm doing. We, the Temeculans, value community, and our TVUSD community should be known as a community that values trust, which leads to a more safe environment. All the parents want is a safe and good education for their kids. We can work as a team in TVUSD to achieve this end. It also, that the parents, teachers, district, and the students working together as a whole on this front, our families and community members will feel connected, informed, and welcome to participate as true partners in the education of our students. Parental rights and protecting our kids is the hill that I'll die on because this is an issue of morality, not politics, but morality. Let me emphasize, thank you. Let me emphasize that reminding our teachers of California Ed Code 233.5, and we brought it up a few times, specifically addressing the concept of morality. Each teacher shall endeavor to impress upon the minds of the pupils the principles of morality, truth, justice, patriotism, and so on. I'm going to create for you a moral argument. Premise one, this will be in the negative, then I'll give you a positive. Premise one, hiding things from parents is morally wrong and blameworthy. Premise two, preventing basic parental rights leads to hiding things from parents. Conclusion, therefore, preventing basic parental rights is morally wrong or blameworthy. Just imagine this. I've heard the arguments run one way. I'm going to run it another way. Let's imagine you have a trans family, and they have a trans kid, and they're happy for their trans kid, and their trans kid is Rachel, but wants to identify as Richard. And Richard now wants to look for hormone therapy, surgical, adaptations to their body, and months go by, right? And Richard wakes up one day and says, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm a little scared. I want to identify as a heterosexual. Don't you, as a trans family, want to know that your son is identifying as a heterosexual? Don't you want to know? It includes you too. These parental rights are broad. They're not just specific to one class of people. It's broad. It's all across the board. With that being said, this is not your meeting. This is a governing board of education meeting, and it's held in public. Please don't interrupt. Now I'm going to give you a positive moral argument. Building a trustworthy and safe environment for the parents is morally right or praiseworthy. These basic parental rights build a trustworthy and safe environment for the parents. Conclusion, therefore, these basic parental rights are morally right and praiseworthy. Why am I doing this? A moral argument here should compel everyone in the room, including the board members, all of us. This is because the conclusions of the moral arguments are directed at your rational attitudes. I am trying to compel you to do the right thing as board members, all of you. This goes to all parents. That's it. And when I say that, I sleep good at night because not only did I promise the people I'd serve I'd protect the kids in this district, on a more broader level, this shouldn't just happen in our district. This should be happening in all schools around the world. All parents should be, parents should be included everywhere, not just in California, not just in our country, everywhere. That's it. Any more discussion? If not, we'll take it to vote. Mr. Schwartz. Oh, your mic's on. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Yeah, okay.
Of what?
Okay.
Wait, can you reread the motion?
We have a motion and a second on the table. The motion is to strip, the motion is to use the supporting document, either Chino, I think they have it up on the board, Maria. They're going to strip the language from it and add Temecula, and that's it. And part of that motion was to waive the second reading. That was the motion, and it was seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, say nay.
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 Motion adopted 3-2.
And Dr. Komrosky, just as a point of clarification, as you had brought up before, there has already been some administrative regulations that have been kind of crafted by some of our attorneys.
Yeah.
We will, based on this decision of the board, we will go ahead and we will work on those administrative regulations. There are some very intricate pieces of the ARs based on certain professions we have in our district that we will include more of a collaborative effort to go ahead and put those ARs in place.
Thank you, Dr. Velez.
And Dr. Velez, just to clarify my points too, because this is not enforceable, and we don't want our teachers going back to the campus tomorrow wondering how it is that they're supposed to enforce this policy. We have a lot of work to do. And can you just explain how that's going to roll out and when they can expect an update? Because I don't want it to be confusing tomorrow.
So we actually, based on the decision tonight, will roll out some information to our school sites, our administrators, and particular parties that are involved in this tomorrow. And I will be basically sharing the same information, that all of the work now is in the AR. And I think for everyone to understand, the board policy tells us the what, and the administrative regulation gives you the details in terms of how. And so our hope is to start pulling together and working with particular counselors, other individuals, probably within the next couple of weeks, to be able to do that, to look at ARs in these particular areas.
Dr. Velez, can I also add that we'd likely also have to sit down with both associations, CSEA and TVA, to negotiate any potential impacts and effects and consider those as part of the administrative regulation.
Which the board welcomes. Would that be effective bargaining?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Frank, do you know if they did that when this guidance came down from the CD?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Was there bargaining about the added requirements on the teachers when the CD guidance came down, when these policies were instituted?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer for you. This was in 2014, so it was before any of us were actually in
Gotcha.
our positions. So I'm going to save Frank on that one, because none of us were actually in our roles at that time, so we're unsure.
No, but it is 1 o'clock at night, so I'm sorry for that. I'll keep you all up to date on the bargaining of the impacts and effects.
Thank you, Mr. Arce. Okay, we are moving on to 2, and we are missing a board member. So, what's that?
We still have a quorum, we can go.
Yeah, no, I know. Okay, yeah, well, it's late. Do we, I call for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-24, 2, on board compensation for missed meetings. And do we have discussion on this before a motion? Okay, I call for a motion and a second.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Barclay.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schwartz. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion adopted 4-0. 1 abstain, or 1's not present. 3, California School Employees Association and Temecula Chapter 538 and Temecula Valley Unified School District Memorandum of Understanding Settlement Agreement Reclassification, Clerk 3 ESS to Secretary 3 Director. I call for a motion and a second to approve this.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Schwartz.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion, Mr. Schwartz, did you say? Oh, motion adopted 5-0. 4, Temecula Valley Educators Association. Oh, 1 public comment on number 4. This, oh, Mr. Edgar Diaz. Is he here?
It's got to be like 6, right?
Minute and a half. 2 minutes.
30 seconds?
4-0 on the motion to pay. You were in the bed.
I was, yeah.
4-0 on the motion
This one.
to approve the pay for missed meeting. Okay? Come on, use your teacher voice, Edgar.
All right, here speaking on behalf of the MOU that TVA negotiated with TVUSD. This MOU provides a structure for educators to be successful in this alternative environment to best suit the needs of students while providing contractual language to set limits and expectations for what teachers are responsible for in this alternative setting. I expect that TVA and TVUSD will be able to work on similar agreements for HIIA and Summit Academy and all other alternative environments, as well as job descriptions not currently represented in the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Okay. I call for a motion a second to approve TVEA, TVUSD Memorandum of Understanding RVHS quarterly schedule. Moved by Mr. Schwartz,
Second.
second by Mrs. Barclay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez, did you vote? Okay, motion adopted 4-0, one abstain. 5, new textbook, IB Mathematics Analysis and Approaches. I call for a motion, a second, to approve the textbook adoption for Mathematics Analysis and Approaches Higher Level by Jennifer Chang, Wadhill et al. Do I have a move by Mr. Schwartz?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Barclay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion adopted 5-0. Negotiations update.
Yeah, briefly, Dr. Komrosky, we have a negotiations meeting scheduled with TVA on September 18th and one with CSCA on September 6th. And so we look forward to seeing them at the bargaining table.
Okay, thank you. Board comments, we could start on the end and work our way down. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez yields.
Yeah, in the interest of time,
Yeah.
it's late.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back at school, and while I may poke fun at the union president from time to time, I really appreciate all the teachers, and we're glad to have you back in the classroom, and we're looking forward to an amazing school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez. Mrs. Barclay?
Well, I sleep great at night, knowing that I am doing my best to represent the voices of a lot of people that aren't being represented on this board. And spitting in the wind once again, but, you know, I heard a story about even when you can't do anything, you can be a witness. And I'm here to be a witness and to help as an ally to those whose voices are not being heard. Happy birthday to Mrs. Deus, because now it's her birthday. Since we're past midnight. Just a couple quick things I wanted to add. Hopefully it's just gonna be on the recording. We'll get out of here quick. The recognitions for the regenerative ag program were awesome. My older daughter was in the very first class of biosustainability that Mr. Brandon taught. We have our name on a brick over there in the greenhouse, and it's so cool. They were just talking about doing that, making plans when she graduated, and it's super cool to see it happening now. It was awesome. Went to the staff barbecue, saw so many people. It was great to see everyone out. I guess that has not been able to happen for quite a few years, so kudos to everyone who helped plan that, and yeah, it was amazing. I was able to go to a couple schools on the first day of school, and the rally at TVHS, awesome. And a back-to-school night over at Lucenio, which was fantastic. I got to go into every single classroom. I love Lucenio. They took me to every single classroom. I volunteered at the luau dance, passed out thousands. We had 6,000 cups of water we passed out. It was great. I was very exhausted, but so fun to see the students. They're back on campus. They're ready to go. The staff just always so enthusiastic. I always love going to those nighttime events and seeing how many teachers are there having such a great time with their students. And the 26,371 students is an awesome number. So while I remain heartbroken about this resolution tonight and worried for our district and worried for our students, I remain hopeful that we can push forward and support our students in every way possible and get past these bumps in the road so that our teachers will feel safe and appreciated as well as our students. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Barclay. Mr. Schwartz?
You always put me on the spot. I visited all my schools schools in my district before school started. I spoke with all the principals and assistant principals, which was great. Made sure they had everything they needed. I did visit Pauba and Vale Ranch on the first day of school, try to help the parents and get the kids moving in the right directions. I will continue to be a voice for those who don't have a voice on this board. I will continue to be an advocate for our children and our teachers, and I wish we would get down to doing things that are positive for education rather than political in nature. Good night.
My favorite aspect of this past week was definitely visiting French Valley Elementary and seeing the excitement of families with their kids and school beginning again. I was honored to have an opportunity to share a few encouraging words, clap for the teachers, and then take in the awesome message from Mr. Cole about his gardening analogy. I know he loves gardening. Just the fact that in our homes, we're responsible for planting seeds, watering, fertilizing, cultivating, pruning, and how in doing so, we love our kids, we love each other as spouses, and we seek to create good character, responsibility, a work ethic, resilience, kindness. I just want to give him a shout out because he set the pace so well that night, and it was so much fun to be there. Speaking of home, I do have a note here from Mr. Edgar Diaz, the president of our Temecula Valley Educators Association. And I want to say this, it has often been said that a house divided cannot stand. In fact, it's a proverb, and it's found in each of the Gospels and a number of other places. I'm a mom. I know you're a dad. I'm sure you're a really good one. As a responsible leader in your household, would you purposefully pit the people in your care against one another? I'm guessing no. Here's my concern. You have been granted an important role in union leadership, and aspects of your back-to-school message that got sent out to over 1,000 teachers was divisive and, in my opinion, unprofessional, in addition to creating a hostile work environment for us as we go and visit. I think the toxicity goes both ways, and so I would really like to do what we need to do to change some of that. Since the 3 board members were sworn in, the union leadership has taken every opportunity to malign and slander the board majority while working with, in some ways, community activists and a biased press. Yes, I know that we've talked about getting together. I don't feel comfortable doing that as an individual. I want to remind you from the very beginning of the campaign season, the union actually blocked the 3 of us out from making any introductions to aspects of the organization when it's normally customary to do so. Incumbent flyers were then stuffed into the teachers' boxes on school campuses as you advocated against us. In the recent July 4th parade in Old Town, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flyers on cars when folks were just there to celebrate. I went back to the parking garage and I picked stuff up off the ground, read it, TVEA, talking about the 3 of us and the things that we're doing in our community that, however you chose to label it, it was offensive. People were there to celebrate the country and July 4th and the parade. Now it's a lawsuit, and I just feel like there's a continual narrative that either we don't want our kids to have textbooks or I know we've talked about sabotage tonight, and I feel that. I feel the abuse, and I'm just gonna say it. And I'm sorry it's 1 a.m. for those of you that are still here at this late time, but I'm sorry. At times I feel like it's the mafia, and I'm gonna call you out because I know the time that each one of us spend, and I deeply respect the people you represent, but I am under no illusion that you are anything but a political group, and unless and until students pay dues, they will always be the last consideration in any of the bargaining. TVEA is a teachers union, it's not a student union, and I've spoken with teachers who don't agree with the union stances, the tactics, our politics, and the fact that they don't have to belong to the union under the Janus decision rendered by the US Supreme Court happened in January of 2018. And I am right now not telling anyone to do any one thing. If teachers in the district want to join, that's great, that's what they get to do. If teachers want to leave and stop paying dues, they maintain all the rights and benefits of every other teacher in the union and can buy better liability than provided by the union at a fraction of a price. The union is no better than the people they serve. And on the eve of discussing and passing a commitment to parental rights and looking at the push for the recall, I mean, our community needs to make a choice. You know, I have people here talking about the fact that I apparently don't wash my clothes, that I lost a job, and I could tell you all in this room a little bit about it. It wasn't because of my job performance. I haven't announced that publicly, so for somebody to come in here and share it, I'm gonna speak to it. It is a sacrifice to be a board member. Each one of us have sacrificed, whether it was Mr. Gonzalez's children being outed at his school, whether it was Dr. Komrosky's dissertation, people going after it. I stepped up to this because I truly love this district and the people and the teachers and the students, and I'm committed, and I have not made all the right decisions. I humbly tell you that. However, the abuse that our families have gotten, what my son got at the podium, it's okay, we're public officials, but I'm just telling you, at the end of the day, it should be better. It should be that the union has something positive to say. And when a SMOR goes out and it's a paragraph this long about all the things where you're running resistance, I don't want to have a phone call or sit down with you. I don't trust you. From the very beginning, that's how I felt. And really, honestly, the unions, they're probably here to stay, but it's one of the, I would say, most negative aspects about education in this country today, because it doesn't always represent parents and students. It's about money. It's about other things, and I'm sorry, but it's come to this point. Now, having said all of this, I would love to change things, and I want all of you to know that. But these are the things I've experienced, and I think it's important, and the only time that I have to speak, because the press is going to be biased, and they're not going to cover my perspective and my heart and where I'm at, so this is my opportunity to do that. You're a dad, I'm a mom, we've got a kingdom here, we've got a household that we can try to protect and do it differently. And so when people look at me and say TVUSD is the most toxic that it's been, I say there's some shared responsibility in that. And so what I would advocate for is that we work through that together in an honest way. And that's all I have to say tonight.
Ms. Wiersma, okay, trying to stay awake here. The most exciting time that I had last week was visiting the 10 schools. I love visiting all the teachers, the students, the student aides, the SPED teachers, on and on. It was awesome. I love visiting Summit Academy. It was super hot. Me and Dr. Velez was almost going to die, but it was so exciting to see that. Great Oak high school football game. Wow. I seriously, Great Oak has a spirit. I just felt honored just to be there watching them play football. I was, there for the first half. Super fun. Other than that, the Masters in Governance classes at CSBA in San Marcos, those classes are awesome. They're valuable. There's a lot of information I'm learning. I even met a former student of mine from Mount Sac. He was the president of the student body there. He was a CSBA part of the leadership team. I'm like, he's like, hi, professor. And I'm like, do I have you in my critical thinking class at Cal State? And he was from Mount Sac. So small world. That's fun. It's helping me learn more about the it's late. Yep, there you go. Thank you. And by the way, conversate is a word, Mr. Schwartz, okay? I doubted myself earlier, but it's a word. Yeah, I did. I looked it up. Okay. So, anyways, it helps me learn more details in governing. Like I said, it's late. It's not even coming out right. And I think, other than that, really, also happy birthday, Mrs. Deus. I'm sorry we kept you here till 1:30, but we like to party late. So that's it for me on the board. And then superintendent comments, Dr. Velez.
I am going to keep this absolutely short. I actually was hoping I didn't have to celebrate Nicole's birthday with her today, that we would all be out of here. But again, happy birthday to Mrs. Deus. And I believe Danny's got a birthday coming up, coming up this weekend, I think. So happy birthday to you as well. Ms. Barclay, you celebrated one on the 11th. So happy birthday to you as well. So I just, again, and I did my opening schools report, and I really do welcome everybody back, our teachers and our classified staff, to our bus drivers, to our principals, and everyone in between. Welcome back, and we're really looking forward to this year.
Thank you. Future agenda items, staff will present information on the following agenda items for the next regular board meeting on September 12th, 2023. We have a study session, topic to be determined. Do we know what that topic is, or is that just... You'll pick one? Okay. There you go. And
can I bring up?
Yeah.
I was asked to bring up later. To an item, just maybe discussing a budget for the board for trainings. Just have some discussion about that and where that can go. Oh, yeah, I said training, but conferences or board, yeah, whatever that is.
Yes.